I'm Bonnie Nonheimer. I'm a practicing attorney with Latanzi, Spalding & Landreth. I'm a partner there. I've been there for 14 years. My professional history has to do with construction litigation, medical malpractice defense, and disability hearings, where you don't have the benefit of the rules of evidence. I've also served as a mock trial attorney coach for Nauset for 4 years prior to this one. And I think it's an excellent program, and I look forward to presiding today. Counsel, would you like to introduce your team?
Your Honor, my name is Nora Lucy, and I will be presenting the opening statement for the plaintiff.
Thank you.
Your Honor, my name is Francesca Galazzi, and I'll be conducting the direct of Leah Heisenai.
Your Honor, my name is Bailey Rose. I will be conducting the direct of Winnie Silverman, as well as the cross-examination of Jim Grace.
Thank you.
Your Honor, my name is Sean Chung, and I'll be presenting the direct examination of Phil Rupp, as well as the closing argument.
Thank you.
Your Honor, my name is Hina Patel, and I will be conducting the cross of Steve J. O'Hara.
Your Honor, my name is Victoria Valentino, and I'll be conducting the cross of Samantha Spade.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth according to the rules of mock trial?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. Counsel ready? Very well.
Your Honor, before we begin, the plaintiff would like to admit stipulations of the parties into evidence.
Very good.
Permission to approach the bench.
Certainly, would you like to present that to opposing counsel? No objection?
No objection.
Thank you. So admitted. This will be Exhibit 1.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. As you know, we are here today for the civil case of Leah Heisenai versus Consolidated Brokers of Boise Insurance Company. However, it is time to tell the story of a father and friend named Liam Heisenai. At 6:30 in the morning, just as the sun was coming up on November 1st, 2013, an alarm goes off in the Heisenai household, beginning a Friday no one would ever forget. After getting changed, Liam makes his way downstairs to the kitchen, where he is greeted by his stepson Jim and his loving wife Isabella. Shortly after getting an omelet for breakfast, he goes to the garage, starts his truck, and lights a cigarette. A cigarette. And just like that, the life of an innocent man who had everything to live for had his taken from him because of a leaked propane tank. Now, for some reason, the defense believes that Liam made the choice to leave behind his daughter, wife, stepson, friends, club teams, a thriving career. Why? Because he had disagreements with his wife, like every married couple? Because his daughter had to pay for her own food and gas, like every adult? The idea that Liam would even consider suicide is preposterous. Now, there was more to Liam than what people saw. Leah Heisenai, the first witness to be called to the stand, and Liam's daughter, will give the court an inside look at the favorable impression Liam left on his family, friends, and community. She will also express who her father was as a person and parent, revealing what he used to love in life. Liam's hobbies and work ethic made him a pinnacle of life, for he knew what it meant to truly live every day. Secondly, a friend of Liam's for over 15 years, Winnie Silverman, will share her best friend's mental state was like prior to his unexpected death. After so many years of being teammates and companions, there would be no one better to assess Liam's mental state. Finally, Phyllis Rupp will use his knowledge of fire protection and safety, forensics, and fire accident scene reconstruction to expose the unlikelihood of someone attempting to kill themselves by gas leak. Your Honor, Leah lost her father. And in this case, it's more about closure than money. Leah's father's life insurance policy came at a random time, not one that was planned. The plaintiff asks for full recognition of her father's death benefits as they rightfully fulfill the application filed. Thank you.
Thank you. When plaintiff is ready, you can call your first witness.
Your Honor, the plaintiff would like to call Leah Heisenai to the stand.
Very good.
Good afternoon, Leah.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and age for the court?
My name is Leah Heisenai, and I'm 32 years old.
And what is your relation to the deceased, Mr. Liam Heisenai?
Liam Heisenai is, or was, my father.
Did you attend college?
I did.
Where?
I attended Bishop's University.
Did you graduate from Bishop's University?
No, I did not.
When did you leave?
I left halfway through my freshman year.
And why?
I left to come back home to help comfort and console my dad after the death of my mother.
What, if any, changes in your father's behavior did you notice after the death of your mother?
I just noticed him become socially withdrawn. He almost drew it within himself. He was a very depressed man.
Did he remain depressed?
No, he did not.
What changed?
His mood increased greatly after meeting my stepmother, Isabella.
How did he seem to you after meeting Isabella?
He seemed just much happier, much livelier, more engaged. He had friends. He was just a happier person.
And when were Liam and Isabella married?
They were married on October 3rd in 2010.
How would you describe the relationship?
Well, like every relationship, it did have its ups and downs. They did fight occasionally, but they did love each other, and for the most part, they were in a very happy relationship.
Could you please extrapolate on the hardships of their relationship?
I know they had a bit of trouble where my father would try to limit Isabella's spending. Often she would drink and go impulse shopping, and he just wanted to limit that.
Did your family change in any other way?
Yes, he did.
How so?
With the addition of Isabella came the addition of my step-sibling, Jess Grace.
Could you please describe your relationship with Jess?
It was a bit strained. Like many blended families, there's a bit of a difficult adjustment period where you're just trying to get to know each other, and it didn't run completely smoothly.
And at the time of his marriage to Isabella, your father worked at his company, Heisenai Construction, correct?
Yes.
What was his role there?
He was a contractor.
How long did your father work as a contractor for?
He's been working as a contractor, or worked as a contractor my whole life.
Did you ever work with your father or his company?
I did.
How so?
I worked on site as a construction helper. I also helped to manage files and help keep the books.
Within what time period in regards to the files?
A few years ago.
To the best of your knowledge, how was Heisenai Construction doing financially at the time of your father's death?
To the best of my knowledge, it was doing pretty well. I know they had 3 jobs going at the time of my father's death, and they had 3 big jobs lined up after that.
And to the best of your knowledge, what was the state of your father's personal finances at the time of his death?
To the best of my knowledge, his finances were very much in order. He never asked me to pay rent, and when I saw his statement, he had a very healthy balance of about $250,000.
Do you have first-hand knowledge of what your father was like as a business executive?
I do.
What was he like?
He was always adept and swift at handling any problems that came up. He wouldn't stop working until all of the problems had been solved, and he got everything done.
Are you yourself currently employed?
I am.
Where do you work?
I work at our local Walmart.
How often do you work there?
I work there about 30 hours a week.
And what's your position?
I work as an assistant manager.
What, if anything, were you doing on the night of October 31st, 2013?
I was celebrating the Red Sox's win of the World Series.
And did you see your father that night?
I did.
Where?
I saw him at our house before we parted ways and went to our own celebrations.
Did you interact with him?
I did.
How so?
He asked me to get the vice grips out of his truck.
Did you go get the vice grips?
I did.
Did you observe anything while you were getting them from the truck?
I did.
What?
I did notice he had a propane tank seated in the back of his, the cab of his truck.
Do you know why your father had that propane tank?
I do.
Why?
He told me he needed it for a job he had on site the next day, on November 1st.
And do you know who filled this propane tank?
My father filled it himself.
Was this something he did normally and regularly?
Yes, my dad filled the tank himself most times he had a job.
And when did he fill this propane tank?
He told me he filled it the day before on October 30th at around 6 p.m.
And on the night of October 31st, did your father celebrate the World Series?
He did.
How?
He went to a celebration with his friends.
And on November 1st, were you both home?
In the morning, yes, we were.
I would like you to walk me through the events of November 1st in the morning. What time did you enter the kitchen?
At 7:13.
Did you interact with your father that morning?
I did.
How so?
I greeted him when I went into the kitchen to get my breakfast.
And after greeting him, what happened?
My father asked Isabella for an aspirin.
And then?
Then she left to go get him one.
Did Isabella re-enter the kitchen?
Yes, she re-entered from the garage.
About how long after, would you say?
Maybe about 5 minutes after?
Did she have the aspirin?
No, she didn't.
And after this encounter, what happened?
My father told her it was all right because he had aspirins located in his truck.
Did Isabella and your father interact in any way that morning?
Yes, Isabella kissed my father goodbye.
Was there anything unusual about their interaction?
Yes, Isabella kissing my father goodbye was a bit of an unusual occurrence.
At what time did your father leave the house?
I'd say he left at around 7:20.
And the explosion, what time did you see it occur?
I saw the explosion occur at around 7:29.
And what did you see when you saw the explosion?
I was up at my room at the time. I looked out the window and I looked in the driveway and I saw my father's truck sitting in the driveway on fire.
Did you do anything?
Yes, I immediately called 911.
Are you aware of an alleged suicide note that's been found?
I am.
Counsel?
No objection.
Your Honor, at this time, I ask the court to mark this document as Exhibit A for identification.
Very well.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Could you please identify this document for the court?
It is a suicide note.
Do you see any handwriting here?
I don't.
Is it typed?
It is typed.
Is there a signature
There is no signature.
or a date?
There is no date.
Have you ever seen the note before Isabella showed it to Investigator Spade?
I did not.
What do you think about the legitimacy of this document as a suicide note written to you by your father?
I don't believe it's legitimate. It doesn't seem like anything my father would do. First of all, my father would never commit suicide. He had everything to live for. We were a happy family. And second, I don't think my father's last note to me would be typed.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, I ask the court to admit Exhibit A into evidence as Exhibit 2 for the purpose of demonstrating its lack of credibility and authenticity.
Counsel, any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
So admitted as Exhibit A for the plaintiff.
Thank you. No further questions.
So, my name is Nolan Green, and I'll be conducting a cross-examination of Leah.
My name is Patrick Morahan, and I will be conducting the direct examination of Samuel Spade.
Okay.
Your Honor, my name is Sam Goldberg. I will be doing the direct examination of Jess Grace.
Okay.
Your Honor, my name is Alana Solsterenthal, and I will be doing the cross-examination of Winnie Silverman.
Okay, thank you.
Your Honor, my name is Michaela Herenia, and I'm going to do the cross of Philip R. Rowe.
Very good, thank you very much. Proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, before we begin, I would like to offer my condolences on behalf of your father's passing.
Thank you.
So, just again, would you please state your name, age, and current place of residence for the record?
My name is Leah Heisenai. I am 32 years old and I live at 67 Norfolk Avenue in Oakville, Massachusetts.
So, as you had spoken the direct examination, you attended Bishop's University in Quebec for a short period of time, but dropped out, isn't that correct?
I did leave, yes.
And your mother passed away due to cancer in 2004, is that right?
Yes, she did.
So, you would say that your father and yourself took this very hard.
I would say we did.
Now, in your affidavit, you said that your father enjoyed playing softball and that he was an avid candlepin bowler, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So following your mother's death, you believe that something was always quote-unquote missing in your father, and despite his enjoyment of his activities, correct?
Yes, he did take my mother's death pretty hard for a time.
Okay. Now, your father also attempted to get you to return to college, is that right?
He did.
Okay. You enjoyed playing video games in your free time, is that right? And, but your father never appreciated them.
No, I would say
He
he
wasn't a big fan. Now, after you dropped out of college, you lived with your dad at home and have stayed in this house since, correct?
I'm sorry? I don't currently reside in the house. I moved out following my father's death.
Okay. Although you helped your dad with his construction business, you were never enthusiastic about this and wished to pursue other possibilities, correct?
Yes.
And you've been working in Walmart for a while now, before your father passed away and currently?
Yes.
Okay. In your affidavit, you said that Isabella considered this a dead-end job and that you were a freeloader for living with your father at your current age. Isn't that correct?
She never directly said I was a freeloader, but that was the impression I did get from her.
Okay. And at Walmart, you're only paid a few dollars over the minimum wage and work around 6 hours a day. You said about 30 hours a week,
Yes.
Tuesday to Saturday. And you said that your father had a healthy balance of $250,000 in his bank account following his death.
Yes.
Okay. But you did mention that there were rumors that your father had some financial problems?
I did hear some rumors about that, yes.
Okay. So in your situation, considering your father's balance and your current work situation, you wouldn't consider yourself financially secure for the future, would you?
Could you please repeat the question?
Considering, you said that you admitted your father had a balance of about $250,000 in his account following his death.
Yes.
And you only work 30 hours a week, a little over minimum wage at Walmart, correct?
Yes.
So you wouldn't consider yourself financially secure for the future in the long run, correct?
Not at the time.
Okay. That's all, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff would like to call Winnie Silverman to the stand.
Okay, very well.
Good afternoon. Please state your name, age, and address for the court.
My name is Winnie Silverman. I'm 42 years old and I live just outside of Boston, Massachusetts.
Did you attend college?
I did.
Where did you attend college?
I attended UMass Boston.
And what is your current occupation?
I'm a certified financial planner and the senior agent at the Silverman Insurance Agency.
Can you tell me how you got involved with the Silverman Insurance Agency?
Yes, my father started the business and then in 2014 I took over as the senior agent.
And can you describe the specifics of what the company does?
Well, we connect to we represent all of the major life insurance companies. Our aim is to get our clients the best rates no matter their age or physical characteristics, medical or financial history. The only thing we don't handle is health insurance.
And what does your position as a certified financial planner entail?
The goal of my position is to completely understand the financial situation and needs of our clients and then to set up the resources to help them meet or exceed them.
And what was your relationship to the decedent Liam Heisenheim?
I was his friend of 15 years.
Did you know him well?
Yes, I did. We were very good friends.
How did you become friends with Liam?
We played together at a recreational softball league. He was mostly a pitcher and I was a catcher, so we spent a lot of time practicing together.
Do you know anything about the members of Liam's family?
Yes, his first wife sadly died. Now it's him, his daughter Leah, his stepdaughter Jess Grace, and his second wife Isabella Grace. Well, husband.
What can you tell me about the death of his first wife?
I know he and Leah took it really hard. Leah came home from college to help her father out.
Do you know anything else about how is Leah today?
Leah's a cashier at Walmart and...
Do you know how Liam met his second wife, Isabella?
I think they met on an online dating site.
Did anything significant happen in the months leading up to Liam's death?
He came to me to help him get life insurance.
And had he previously discussed life insurance?
We had talked about it a few times over the years, particularly right after the death of his first wife.
So, do you know what made him finally decide to get life insurance?
He told me that he had seen one of his employees almost fall off a roof and had realized he put it that he could die any day, and he wanted to make sure that if that were ever to happen, his family would be provided for.
Did he have any other reasons why he decided to get life insurance?
He also said that after the death of his first wife, he knew life was short.
And how did you help him obtain a life insurance policy?
He wanted me to help him fill out his application in person to make sure there weren't any mistakes.
And when and where did you meet?
We met at his house on March 25th, 2013.
What can you tell me about the meeting?
As per usual, Isabella would not really leave me alone with Liam, so she was there the whole time, paying close attention. I think I even saw her smile when he said he wanted to get $5 million to make sure his family was provided for.
Thank you. And how did you help Liam fill out the policy?
I explained to him what kinds of conditions needed to be listed and which were more insignificant. I also explained how severe a condition had to be, like that it had to be recognized by a doctor in order to list it. You don't just list a temporary condition.
Thank you. Did you notice anything else unusual as you helped him?
Well, it was strange. Isabella almost seemed to be paying closer attention than Liam did. For example, I think he had checked off the box saying that he hadn't had any tobacco products in the last 5 years, and she told him everyone knew about his morning routine, so he changed his answer to say that he smoked once or twice a day.
Thank you. Please describe the details of the final policy.
It's a $5 million life insurance policy. It was issued on April 1st, 2013 by the Consolidated Brokers of Boise Insurance Company. It's paid at an annual premium of $7,200 a year, and it has a double indemnity clause for cases of accident or murder.
Thank you. And when was the last time you saw Liam?
The last time I saw him was the night before he died when we celebrated the World Series.
Did he appear to enjoy himself?
Yes, he did. He seemed very relaxed, and he said everything was going great.
And how did you find out about the death of Liam Heisenai?
A week later, I was shocked to learn that he had been found dead in his driveway.
Do you know anything else about the death?
Well, I know some people have said that it's a suicide, which I know Liam wasn't suicidal. He never seemed depressed, and he never seemed out of sorts. And I know some people have also said it could have been a murder.
Do you know why claims that he is suicidal were made?
In my opinion, this is a case of the insurance company not wanting to pay out. They'll almost look for any excuse not to pay often.
Is there anything else you have to say about this?
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
So you've been selling life insurance since you graduated college for 21 years, is that correct?
Yes.
And you sell insurance for all major life insurers?
Yes, we do.
In your vast experience, you know that insurers always look for an excuse not to pay a claim, is that correct?
Yes, very often.
And insurers always look for a reason not to pay a valid claim, especially when an insured one that's insured dies soon after the policy is issued.
Yes, that is my experience.
And you previously suggested to Liam that he should get life insurance.
I did. I had suggested that to him.
In fact, for years, you had counseled Liam to get life insurance.
We had talked about it many times.
And after his wife first died, you again suggested to Liam that life insurance for him would be a good idea.
Yes.
Liam told you that he agreed that life insurance...
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
And how do you respond?
I'll rephrase the question.
Thank you. Thank you.
And but Liam still didn't apply for life insurance after all these years.
Well, he not directly after the death of his first wife, no.
And in fact, Mr. Silverman, Ms. Silverman, my apologies. Liam only decided to obtain life insurance a few short months prior to his death.
Yes.
You offered to send Liam an online application for life insurance?
I did.
And Liam didn't want to fill out the application online, only by hand?
He wanted to fill it out by hand to make sure there would be no mistakes.
Yes. And at that meeting, Liam asked you for $5 million worth of life insurance.
Yes, that is the amount he decided.
And Liam wanted to make sure that his family was taken care of?
In the event that he ever died, yes.
In fact, Ms. Silverman, Liam's $5 million life insurance policy was issued on April 1st, 2014, correct?
April 1st, 2013.
Yes, and Liam Heisenai then seemed content to you that his estate plan was in order.
I believe he did, yes.
As the summer of 2013, you began to see less and less of Liam.
I did see less of him that summer.
You noticed stress in his voice?
I did.
And you don't know what the cause of Liam's stress was?
I do. I just believe he was quite busy with work. Yeah.
And and Liam is a dear friend of yours?
Yes.
Was a dear friend? And you played softball together, in fact?
Yes, we did.
And you knew how much Lee meant to Liam?
I did.
And Liam always worried about Lee, is that correct?
I believe so.
And Lee never finished college?
No.
Lee didn't earn a lot of money either, is that correct?
I'm sorry. I'm not sure.
Beyond the scope of the witness's knowledge, objection side.
Do you have a response for that?
This was brought up in the previous witness's testimony.
Okay.
Yes, but we don't know if this witness has knowledge of that because it's not their own affidavit.
Is there a follow-up question you might want to ask?
You feel that Liam was in fact guilty about the way that Lee turned out?
I'm not sure.
Well, would you like me to refresh your memory on this?
Sure.
May I approach the witness here?
If you could please show it to opposing counsel.
Objection, Your Honor, the time has actually ended.
Okay, I think in my discretion, we can suspend that for a little bit because based on objections, we're going to give a little leeway.
Excuse me, Your Honor, this document is marked. I think we could provide a clean copy from this table.
Okay.
Here you go.
And if you could just please identify what's in your hand.
Yes. This is your affidavit, Ms. Silverman. May I approach the witness? So here in this document, you say that, you say that she was guilty for.
It says I say who was guilty. I'm sorry. I'm
Objection, Your
understanding your
Honor.
question.
Counsel's not following the procedure.
And how so?
They did not ask her to identify the document and that she had signed under the pains and penalties of perjury.
Would you please identify the document?
That's my
Do you
affidavit.
recognize it?
That's my affidavit.
Okay.
And is your memory refreshed?
About what? I'm sorry. Can you please repeat the question?
That Liam felt guilty about the way that Lee had turned out?
I don't believe my affidavit says that where you showed me.
Okay, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds more.
So one last question. Isabella was not a beneficiary of Liam's life insurance policy?
No, she wasn't.
No further questions, Your Honor.
The plaintiff would like to call Mr. Philip Rupp to the stand.
Okay.
Good evening. Can you just please state your name for the court?
Yes, my name is Philip R. Rupp.
And what's your current occupation?
I'm currently the principal of the fire safety consulting firm of Rupp, Burnham, and Fry.
Can you just provide a bit about your educational background?
Of course. I received my bachelor's in fire science technology from Mass Maritime, as well as my master's degree in forensic science with a concentration in fire science from UMass Amherst.
Now, outside of academia, what experience do you have in this field?
I've also received training from both the Massachusetts Fire Academy and the Massachusetts State Police Academy. I also served as a firefighter for the city of Boston for 25 years, retiring as a captain, as well as a forensic arson specialist for the State Fire Marshal's Office.
And during your time doing this, have you received any awards or honors?
Yes, I have.
And can you just give a few of those for us?
Most notably, I've received the Expert of Experts Award from the American College of Forensic Fire Experts. Additionally, I'm the former president of both the National Forensic Fire Association and the American Fire Science Association.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
My curriculum vitae.
Your Honor, may I have this document marked as Exhibit C for identification purposes only?
Counsel, do you have any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Very well. So, Mark?
And also at this time, I would like to ask that the court recognize Philip Rupp as an expert on the topics of fire safety, forensics, as well as fire scene reconstruction.
Counsel?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay. So will be admitted as an expert witness in fire safety, forensics, and accident scene reconstruction. Yes.
Thank you. Philip Rupp, can you just describe your connection to this case?
Of course. I was retained by the attorneys for the plaintiff, Lee Heise and I, in order to examine the forensic evidence in this case.
And what was your objective in this?
In order to, based upon the evidence that I discovered, render an opinion as to whether Mr. Heise and I's death was an accident.
And about this investigation, where did you begin?
I began by examining the scene of the accident.
And what did you do after that?
I also examined photographs, Mr. Heise and I's motor vehicle, and the property, as well as the decedent's body.
Can you just describe what was the goal of investigating these things?
Mainly to determine fire burn residue around the property, on the truck, on a propane tank located near the fire, as well as the burn marks on Mr. Heise and I's body.
So what are your important methods for doing this kind of fire scene reconstruction?
Most notably, as I said, fire residue analysis plays an extremely important role in reconstructing fire accidents.
And did you have any conclusions from this? At this time, did you have any conclusions?
Sorry, please repeat the question.
Like, after this initial investigation, did you have any conclusions, or not until later?
Not until later, on further research.
Did you do anything else in your review after this?
Yes, I did.
And what'd you do?
I interviewed Miss Heise and I.
And what did you learn from talking to Leah?
I learned from Miss Heise and I that Mr. Heise and I, the location of the propane tank was on the back seat of this truck.
Now, you say propane. Is there anything pertinent about the gas specifically that the court should know about?
Yes, there is.
And what about it?
Most notably, that propane gas is heavier than air, so it sinks. Therefore, it does not dissolve rapidly, so it pools around the ground of a propane tank, as well as that it is odorless. So another gas, mercaptan, is added. It has a rotten egg smell in order to identify if there's a leak.
And how is that important to this case specifically?
Most specifically, in order to determine if there was a leak in Mr. Heise and I's tank.
Thank you. Was there any other considerations made about the propane tank?
Yes.
And can you just elaborate?
Most notably, the OPD valve.
What is an OPD valve?
OPD valve stands for Overfill Prevention Device, and it's required for all 4 to 40-pound canisters.
And did this lead you to any conclusions?
Yes, it did.
And what were those conclusions?
These conclusions were that as the OPD valve only allows propane into or out of the tank, so long as there's an end hose connector, I determined that upon examining Mr. Heisenai's tank, that his tank lacked an OPD valve, as well as appearing to be at least 10 years old.
So considering all of this evidence you've looked at, what is your expert opinion as to what happened on November 1st?
My expert opinion is that Mr. Heisenai did not intentionally cause this death. It was an accident.
Can you explain your reasoning?
Yes, I can. Most notably, as I said, I examined Mr. Heisenai's propane tank. I determined there was no OPD valve, which is extremely unnerving, as propane is extremely dangerous. You need an OPD valve. Additionally, as I said, the tank was extremely rusted and corroded, as well as appearing to be at least 10 years old, so it was not in proper shape or condition.
And can you qualify your conclusions to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
That I can.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
So, Mr. Rupp, you were hired by the plaintiff's attorneys to testify on their behalf in this case, isn't that right?
That I was.
You were being paid for your testimony, is that correct?
I was being paid to do my job, which is fire scene reconstruction. It's my profession.
For the past 10 years, all you have done is act as an expert witness, isn't that true?
Yes, I have, but I'm an expert witness in certain fields.
As part of your investigation, you talked to and questioned the plaintiffs in this case, Ms. Lee Heisenai, is that correct?
That I did.
But sir, you have not spoken with nor questioned any other witnesses in this case, have you?
No, I have not, but I thought that Leah was the primary target, since the decedent was her father.
Mr. Rupp, the exact location of the propane tank in the decedent's truck in the case is important to have, isn't it?
That it is.
The only way that you know of the tank's location is by what the plaintiff told you, right?
Well, as she would know, he's her father.
Okay. So, you cannot be positive about exactly where the tank was prior to the explosion, can you?
Well, it is undetermined, but it was located in the back seat, on the floor of the back seat of Mr. Heisenai's truck.
Are you certain about that?
That I am.
In your affidavit, you state that if Liam had fully opened the valve the night before, the propane would have fully dissipated, right?
That is a possibility, but I thought it was highly improbable that Mr. Heisenai would have done that.
Well, isn't it true that Liam could have opened the tank valve slightly so that you could have, there could have been a leak, a slow leak?
Please repeat the question.
I'm sorry, what?
Please repeat the question, please.
Isn't it true that Liam could have opened the tank valve slightly so that there could have been a slow leak?
There's a possibility, but it's uncertain. I'm not Mr. Heisenai.
Had he done this, could one imply that all the propane would have not dissipated by the morning? Isn't that true?
Please repeat the question.
Had he done this, one could imply, Mr. Rupp, that all of the propane would have not dissipated by the morning?
Well, as I said, it's not sure whether or not it was manually opened, the valve, or it was opened during the explosion.
It's possible that Liam intentionally overfilled the propane tank the night before, isn't it?
There's a possibility, but as I said, I'm not Mr. Heisenai. I'm not sure of his actions. He's dead.
Mr. Rupp, you stated that Liam did not have the time on the morning of November 1st, 2013 to cause this explosion, right?
That he did not.
Jess Grace was there. You didn't ask her about the timing, did you?
I did not, as I thought Miss Heisenai, being Liam's daughter, I had a closer connection with Mr. Heisenai and would know more about him and his business.
Isabella was there that morning too. You didn't ask her about that, did you?
As I said, Miss Heisenai, being Mr. Heisenai's daughter, would know specifically about his business practices and what he did for his company.
The only... I'm sorry, what was...
As well as his materials that he used.
The only way to come to this conclusion was from the plaintiff's version of the morning's events, right?
Well, that and also the evidence that I examined at the scene, as well as I said, photographs, the decedent's body, the residue on his truck, the propane tank.
Thank you. I have no further questions to this witness.
So, would a different position of the propane tank in the cab of the truck have made a difference in the explosion?
No, it would not.
Thank you. No further questions.
You stated that the position doesn't matter, right, of where the tank is?
I said, it did not. Still an explosion, still in the truck. That's where the tank was.
May I approach the bench? I have his affidavit that I'd like to present.
Okay, would you show that document to opposing counsel, please?
It's,
Do you guys have it?
Yes,
Oh, it's marked. Yeah, I guess the document's marked.
Okay, is there a clean copy somewhere?
Yeah, it's all marked.
Yeah.
May I approach the
You
witness?
may.
So Mr. Rupp, you state, at first can you identify this document?
This is my affidavit.
For paragraph 8, you said that this evidence is critical in order to determine the origin of the fire explosion, referring to the tank.
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel did not follow procedure in the impeachment.
Sustained. You can't testify as to what's in the affidavit. Is there another way you'd like to approach that?
Sir, will you please read the sentence?
This evidence is critical in order to determine the origin of the fire/explosion.
And do you know what that is referring to?
The origin, yes. It's important to determine where the origin was, the tank in the truck. As I said, the tank was in the truck. It doesn't matter its position in the truck, so long as the truck still caused an explosion.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Yes, we'd like to bring to your attention that opposing counsel has not produced an opening statement for the court.
Very well.
And beyond that, the plaintiff rests.
Thank you.
May I deliver the opening statement, please?
You may, and we can check the rules on this, but I believe that defense has the option to present it after the case is completed.
They do.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dylan Bridgewater. Today my team is here to defend the Consolidated Brokers of Boise Insurance Company in making the case that Liam Heisenai committed suicide on November 1st, 2013, which was in 3 years of the policy's issuance. Due to these facts, the company is not required to make any payment on the life insurance policy. That being said, on behalf of my whole team and the Consolidated Brokers of Boise Insurance Company, we are deeply sorry for the family's loss in Liam Heisenai. Now I'd like to introduce the attorneys within my team. Samuel Wilberg, Patrick Morahan, Luigi Butter, Nolan Green, Alanis Wilson-Arenthal, and Michaela Harania. There are 3 witnesses being called by the defendant. Jess Grace was Mr. Heisenai's stepdaughter. She can account for the downward slope Liam was on leading up to his suicide. Our next witness is Sam Spade, who investigated for Boise Insurance Company and was able to find Heisenai's suicide note. The third and final witness we will be calling is Dr. Stevie J. O'Hara. Dr. O'Hara can qualify how Mr. Heisenai's mental state was in fact one that would lead to suicide. There is an undeniable amount of evidence within witnesses of the plaintiff that prove Liam Heisenai intentionally took his own life. There is biasness shown in the options of both Phyllis Rupp, in the opinions of both Phyllis Rupp and Winnie Silverman. Rupp's on testimony about unlicensed people supports the fact that Liam could have intentionally overfilled the propane tank, intentionally causing a leak and ultimately his own death. Furthermore, Silverman has shown a disliking towards insurance companies and expressed a feeling that they are always intending to avoid paying claims. The exploration of the evidence will clearly show that Liam Heisenai committed suicide on November 1st, 2013. And therefore, as this was in 3 years of the inception of the life insurance policy, no payment in the policy is required, and therefore, after you hear all the evidence, we will be back requesting a finding in favor of the defendant. Thank you.
First witness to the stand, Mrs. Jess Grace.
Okay, well,
Good afternoon, Ms. Grace.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Please state your name and your age for the court.
My name is Jess Grace, and I'm 24 years old.
Okay. So, Ms. Grace, where did you attend high school?
I attended high school at Sullivan Academy in Vermont.
And can you describe the school for me?
It was a prestigious boarding school in Vermont.
Okay. And now, did Liam know much about your academic success?
Not much.
What did he think about it?
He thought I was spending money most of the time when I was supposed to be at school.
Okay. And so, after high school, where did you attend college?
I attended college at Sturgis College.
Any scholarships?
Yeah, most of it was paid for. I graduated top in the class.
So, where did you live while you were in college?
I lived in a loft.
How much was this loft?
Around $38,000.
So, would you say this was a lot of money for your family?
Not much. Liam seemed to have a lot of money and spent a lot of money on things. For example, when him and my mother first started dating, he would always send fancy black cars to pick her up. And 3 weeks into them starting dating, he bought me a new MacBook and an iPhone.
Okay. So, after Liam and your mother got married, did anything happen to change?
Yes, he seemed a lot more concerned with spending. For example, he was always on my case about my credit card bill, and he even got on my mom sometimes about her spending.
Okay, so did you ever see or hear anything that would make you think Liam had any financial troubles?
Yes, one night I heard a phone call he was making in his office.
What did you hear on the phone call?
He was telling somebody on the phone that he would get their payment.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
This is not hearsay because I'm not trying to prove a statement correct. I'm just proving the circumstance of Liam's emotional state.
very good, overruled. Proceed.
So what did you hear on the phone call that night?
He was telling somebody that he would get their payment to them and for them to get off his back.
Okay. And was there any other ways that Liam may have exhibited any signs of stress or anxiety?
Yeah, he would scream and yell for around like 5 minutes, then go on to laughing with my mom like a completely different person.
Okay. And did you ever have any reasons to go into Liam's study?
Yeah, one time my mom told me to retrieve her credit card, which he kept in his study.
Where was it in his study?
In his drawer.
And was there anything else in the drawer?
Yes.
What else was in the drawer?
There was a judgment with his name on it for $5 million.
Anything else?
There was lorazepam, I believe it's pronounced.
Mm-hmm. Lorazepam. And did you find anything else in the drawer?
Yes, I did. I found an article on propane explosions at work sites.
Okay. Is that it?
Yes.
So, that morning at breakfast, you mentioned to Liam about the PAX care. How was Liam that morning at breakfast?
It was very weird. He seemed very out of it.
Okay. And when Liam mentioned to Liam about the PAX gaming convention, did you hear him say anything?
Yeah, he said he'd be watching over Leah at her PAX
Objection,
convention.
Your Honor, hearsay.
Same thing. I'm not proving his statement correct by using what she heard. I'm proving the circumstances of his emotion.
And remind me of the statement, please.
The question or the statement?
The statement that's being objected to.
That.
He would be watching over Leah at her PAX convention.
Okay. And your objection is based on hearsay, and what is your response?
That it's showing his emotional state at the time. I'm not proving anything correct.
Very good, overruled.
And so, based on these facts, would you say that Liam committed suicide?
Yes, I did.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Up on your cross.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Is it true that Liam Hise and I bought you and your mother Isabella fancy gifts?
Yes, at the beginning of the relationship, definitely.
And he even bought you a brand new MacBook and an iPhone within the first few weeks of their relationship, correct?
Yes.
And he would pick your mother Isabella up in fancy black cars and take her out to the newest Michelin star restaurants in town?
Yeah, I would say that.
And he owned a large home, correct?
Yes.
Knowing all of this, would you say that Liam Hise and I was a successful and financially stable man?
I would say he appeared that way. However, from the judgment I found in his drawer, I wouldn't say that.
Despite this, he was still able to afford fancy gifts and owned a large home, yes?
Yes.
Okay. You claim that Liam refused to let your mother co-sign the lease for your loft, which cost $38,000 a year, correct?
Yes.
And you claim that that $38,000 is an insignificant amount of money?
To Liam, who seemed to appear to have a lot of money, then yes.
And you even call him a cheapskate because he refused to pay the $38,000?
In comparison to what he used to spend in the beginning of the relationship, yes.
Do you believe the cost of a MacBook is equivalent to the price of $38,000?
No, but how early it was in the relationship was quite shocking.
Are you able to recognize that $38,000 per year is in fact a large amount of money and that most middle-class people would not be able to afford a loft at this price point?
Liam did not appear to be a middle-class man, according to the house he owned and all the fancy gifts he bought my mother and even me at the beginning of their relationship.
So he was successful, correct?
I would say he was.
Were you resentful that Liam refused to pay for the loft?
Not really. I mean, I wish he wouldn't have prevented my mother from signing it, but I don't say I held a grudge.
Do you believe your mother was resentful about this?
No, I don't believe so.
But she wished to co-sign your lease and he did refuse to allow her to do so, correct?
Correct.
Additionally, Liam had to scrutinize your credit card bill, correct?
Yes.
And your mother's credit card bill as well?
Yes.
He even had to go so far as to keeping her credit card in a drawer, yes?
Yeah.
So is it true that there has been conflict within your blended family?
I would say there has been, but it's quite common for most blended families.
And you have a poor relationship with your stepsister, Leah, correct?
We just never really connected. I wouldn't say there's any, tension.
So you believe that every family does face conflict, yes?
Yes.
And would you say blended families are particularly susceptible to conflict?
Yes, I believe so.
Despite the fact that you do not have a good relationship with Leah, you still claim that she is nice, yes?
Yes.
So do you think that this is a relationship that could have pushed Liam towards suicide?
I don't think our relationship could have pushed it, but there were a lot of other things.
Thank you. On the day of Liam's death, your mother made omelets for your family, correct?
Yeah.
Was this a typical occurrence?
No.
Do you remember the last time she made omelets for your family?
I don't remember.
You claim that Liam seemed a bit tired and out of it that morning, correct?
Yes.
Hadn't he just been celebrating the World Series the night before with friends?
Yes.
So would it make sense that he would appear tired and out of it the morning after a night of celebration with friends?
Yes.
Liam asked Isabella for an aspirin that morning, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And your mother then stepped out of the room?
Yeah.
When she returned, did she have the aspirin?
No, she did not.
Before Liam left, your mother gave him a goodbye hug and kiss, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the last time that you saw Liam before he died, yes?
Yes.
And when she called you she called you hours after the death, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And when she called you, did she sound upset?
Somewhat, yes.
Was she crying?
No, but it was hours after.
You claim she sounded more serious, though, yes?
Mm-hmm.
During the conversation, it was discussed that Liam died in his truck from an explosion, yes?
Yes.
And she asked whether or not you had noticed anything that morning, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you had seen or heard anything?
Mm-hmm.
Did she say that Liam caused the explosion?
No.
You lost your own father, correct?
Yes.
So you understand the grief that comes when someone you love dies, yes?
Yes, I felt very bad for Leah after her father had
Thank
passed.
you. And you can also understand that Leah had to deal with this more than once, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Are you sad that Liam is gone?
Yes, especially for Leah and my mother.
One moment, Your Honor. I'm just going to Your Honor, Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Do you recognize this document?
Yes, this is my affidavit.
And did you sign this under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, the plaintiff is out of time.
May I finish the impeachment, Your Honor?
Yes, we'll give you a little bit of leeway.
One moment. Could you please read paragraph 13 from
Got about 15 seconds, counsel.
Thank you. Your Honor, I'm going to retract the impeachment. I apologize.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
No further questions.
Defense would like to call Samuel Spade to stand.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Spade. Good evening, Your Honor.
Good evening.
Mr. Spade, please state your name and age for the court.
My name is Samuel Spade. I'm 52 years old.
Now, Mr. Spade, what do you do for work?
I'm an investigator for Consolidated Brokers of Boise Insurance.
Now, in what year did you start in this industry?
2005.
Now, what level did you start in this industry?
Level 1.
And claims of?
Up to $100,000.
Now, what level are you at currently?
5.
And level 5 entails claims of what?
$1 to $5 million.
Okay. Are there any further levels you could reach?
I could reach level 6. I'm eligible for that in September of this year, and that's over $5 million claims.
Wow. All right then. How many level 6 are there in this country?
Very few. I'd be one of the only ones.
Okay. Now, when did you begin the Heisenberg case?
In November of 2013.
And what was the claim on the Heisenberg case?
$5 million.
And who was the beneficiary in the Heisenberg case?
Lee Heisenberg.
What were you informed about the CBB's opinion on this case prior to your investigation?
I wasn't given any opinion, so I remained impartial.
So, your first meeting in Massachusetts was on?
November 17th.
And who was this with?
Isabella.
Now, what did Isabella Heisenberg tell you about her husband's death?
She said she thought it was an accident.
Okay. Now, what was her demeanor during this meeting?
She seemed very sad.
Okay. So, your second meeting in Massachusetts was with?
I don't recall.
Right, if I refresh your memory.
Sure.
Present this.
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay, very good.
Permission to approach you.
Yes, you may. Thank you very much.
Now, you state here your second meeting. This paragraph number 13. Could you read paragraph 13?
Whole paragraph?
No, this first two sentences.
It was a home worth dying for. Vaulted ceilings, marble floors, the builder had clearly spared no expense. The only flaw was a plethora of tacky decorations. With Lee.
So you were with Lee?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So can you describe the temperament of Leah in comparison to Leah's mother-in-law?
Not as sad as Isabella.
Okay. Now, I understand that Leah allowed you into her father's office.
She did.
What did you find in the office?
I found a piece of paper that said that, let me know that Liam's construction company had been sued after a failed construction project, and he'd lost $5 million, and he'd mortgaged his home to help pay for that.
Okay. We'd like to present this document to the court. Any objections?
No objections, Your Honor.
Very well.
Permission to approach the bench?
Yes. Did you want to mark that for,
Yes, we'd like to submit that to the court.
for what purpose?
Well, just to prove that the amount
I'm sorry, did you want to identify it for identification at
as
this
a,
point?
as a, exhibit,
You
A.
can say, has it been authenticated?
Yes, it has been.
At this point, it's, who's authenticated it?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yeah,
They're not following procedure.
and how so?
They have not asked the witness to identify the document yet.
Okay,
Like to authenticate it with this. Mr. Spade? This is the document.
Yes.
I'm sorry, and what is the document?
This is.
I'm asking the witness, I'm sorry.
That's the, from the Sunshine Company.
Okay.
Yes, his, well, that's the judgment for $5 million, prior stated in his. So, what was the amount owed on this?
$5 million?
$5 million. Interesting. Now, what room in the house were you shown the suicide note, which has probably been submitted?
His office?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yes?
That's not correct. It's not, invention of fact. Objection, Your Honor, invention of fact.
Okay, and what is the fact that you are objecting to?
The suicide note, he was not shown the suicide note in the office.
Which is something that might come out on cross,
Yes, Your Honor.
okay? Do you have any other objection at this moment?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, please proceed.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Ready for your cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Spade, and good afternoon, Your Honor. You have committed grand theft auto, correct?
Yes.
And you served time in prison for this, correct?
Yes.
Is it true that when you were hired by CBB Insurance, you had no prior experience in this field?
Yes.
And is it true that before you were working for CBB, you were only working small dead-end jobs, correct?
Yes.
So you never had any training in investigation before working for CBB, and the only training you have ever received in investigation is the training provided by CBB, correct?
Yes.
Before you began your investigation, you were informed that the case was considered SDI, which means that the death was suspicious, correct?
Yes.
And knowing this information, is it possible that you could have gone into the investigation with a bias?
Possibly, but they didn't inform me of it.
Yes or no only, please.
Yes.
You have seen Liam's death certificate, correct?
No.
Was Liam's death certificate and the information provided to you by the CBB Insurance Company before your investigation began?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
So you have seen Liam's death certificate, correct?
Yes.
No objections, Your Honor.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Can you please identify this for the court?
Certificate of death for Liam.
At this time, I would like to request that this document be marked as Exhibit C for identification purposes.
Okay, so marked.
And is this the death certificate that you saw?
Yes.
And this death certificate states that Liam's death was in fact ruled an accident, correct?
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, I ask that the court admit this Exhibit C into evidence.
Any objection? Thank you, so admitted.
Isn't it true that Isabella was the one who submitted the claim for the life insurance money, not Leah, the daughter of the deceased?
Yes.
And she submitted the claim on the 9th of November, only 8 days after Liam's death, correct?
Correct.
Isn't it true that during your interview with Isabella, she failed to provide any clarity on the death?
Yes.
And isn't it also true that for the most part of her interview, she spoke mainly about herself, not about Liam or his family?
Yes.
However, during the interview, you did learn that Isabella never finished high school and was a waitress struggling to make ends meet, correct?
Yes.
And you learned that Isabella's financial status was raised after marrying Liam?
Yes.
Isabella seemed nervous and anxious throughout the entire interview, correct?
Yes.
And you also noticed that she showed an obvious guilty conscience throughout the whole investigation, correct?
Yes.
When you asked her about her husband's death, she gave you a short answer with very little detail, correct?
Yes.
And during the interview, she blurted out asking if she was a suspect in the death, correct?
Yes.
Isabella was aware that there was a propane tank in the cab of the truck, correct?
Yes.
When you showed Isabella that she would not be gaining anything from the life insurance, she began to cry, correct?
Yes.
Leah informed you of some odd behavior exhibited by her father, such as sleep loss, which could have caused Liam to miss the smell of the propane or make a careless mistake while filling the tank, correct?
Yes.
And this would cause an accident, correct?
Yes.
When you met Jess Grace, they were extremely hostile to you, and they even muttered that you were an idiot under their breath and ordered you to leave the home, correct?
Yes.
And you were suspicious of Isabella at this point in your investigation and wanted to confirm her whereabouts on the day of the death, correct?
Yes.
When you returned to the residence the next morning after your interview with Isabella, you blocked her car in the driveway, correct?
Yes.
And then you informed her that she was a suspect for murder and the police were on her way to arrest her, correct?
Yes.
Is it true that Isabella was the only person you interviewed in your whole investigation?
No.
Well, formally interviewed.
Oh, yes.
So you came to the conclusion that Isabella was a suspect for murder and began the arrest of Isabella after only a short walk through of the house in a brief, inconclusive interview with Isabella, correct?
Yes.
Are things like blocking a car in the driveway and calling the police to arrest someone for murder orthodox steps to take in an insurance investigation as brief and inconclusive as this one?
No.
After you alerted Isabella of the police, she then claimed that she could prove that he did it himself, correct?
Yes.
And she said that she could do this by showing you a suicide note.
Yes.
However, the wording of the note showed that it was hastily written and it was actually typed, correct?
Yes.
And isn't it true that she only presented you with the note after she was accused of murder, correct?
Yes.
And isn't it true that she was the only one who was aware of the note's existence and where it was located?
Yes.
Throughout your investigation...
Checking your eye. The time has finished.
Okay, please finish it up.
Okay, thank you. Throughout your investigation, you were confident that Isabella had committed murder and even noticed her guilty conscience. And until she presented you with a hastily written suicide note, you didn't believe the death was suicide, but instead that it was murder, correct?
No.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Can you redirect?
The defense would like to request a brief recess.
Okay, very well.
David, when you're referring to your brief encounter with Jess, the word idiot was used.
Excuse me, Your Honor, I'm just having trouble hearing right now.
Okay.
Would you mind speaking up?
Of course.
Thank you.
Mr. Spade, following, or during, I should say, your brief encounter with Jess used the word idiot only after, and under her breath, only after your mention of being allowed into the house by Leah. Is that correct?
Yes.
Jess did not call you an idiot. Is that correct?
I don't know who she was calling. She said under her breath.
Now, did you actually call the police?
No.
No, you did not. And you've said this more as a negotiation tactic. Is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Opposing counsel has allotted the amount of questions allowed on the redirect.
Sustained. Thank you.
You stated earlier that you did not actually call the police. You only threatened to call the police.
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Very good.
Good evening. After her, good evening, Your Honor.
Good evening.
Can you please state your name and address for the court?
My name is Dr. Stevie J. O'Hara, and I currently reside at 7 Old Forge Road, Chester, Massachusetts.
Could you just give the court a brief history of your education?
I have my doctorate in clinical psychology from Harvard and a master's degree in forensics from Boston University.
And after you had gone through this education, what did you do afterwards in terms of career choice?
I work for the FBI.
So currently, what is your profession?
I currently work as a masons and I forget the exact position.
May I refresh his memory? May I refresh your memory?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you guys recognize the talent as well as his?
No objections, Your Honor. Why do we need the court to be done?
Okay. No objections. Give me one moment, permission to approach the witness, Your Honor.
Yes, so permitted.
Could you read the last line on the first paragraph, right here?
I am a forensic psychologist.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so what does your job currently entail?
Well, I study the mental state of a person, like leading up until their death.
All right, and what do you specialize in currently in terms of the forensic psychologist field?
What do you mean?
May I approach the witness? You may. I'm sure you guys have. Yes. Thank you. Could you please read for the court the first two sentences in the 8th paragraph, please?
Okay, excuse me, counsel, if you're going to refresh recollection, you ought to hand the material to the witness so that he can read it and refresh his recollection, then you should take it back.
All right.
I'm a forensic psychologist and principal.
I'm sorry, not out loud, just read it to yourself if you could. And when you're ready, then you can hand it back to your counsel.
All right, so I will ask the question again. What does your job entail?
I'm the principal at Mason Drake LLP firm.
All right, and how did you come in contact with this case?
I was contacted by CBB.
All right, and what did you find out about the relationship between Mr. Hazan and Isabella during your investigation?
Well, during their initial courtship, Liam was very frivolous in his spending to try and impress, or my impression is that he was trying to impress Isabella.
Your Honor, may I approach the...
You may.
Please. Do you guys recognize this? Are there any objections?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay. May I approach the
witness?
witness?
You may.
Thank you. Do you recognize this document?
I do.
And what is it?
This is my curriculum vitae.
Thank you. Your Honor, I would now like to submit Dr. O'Hara as an expert witness in the field of forensic psychology.
Counsel?
No objections, Your Honor.
Very well. You will be admitted as an expert in forensic psychology.
Thank you. So moving on about the case, what can you conclude about Mr. Hazan's life during the marriage prior to the death of Mr. Hazan?
Well, during the marriage, Mr. Hazan and I was very concerned with being able to provide for his family.
And did you find any conclusions of Mr. Heisen's mental state?
Well, due to his prescription drug use, he obviously had some sort of problems with stress.
And what was the conclusion of what type of mental illness or mental problem that he had been having during his time?
Please repeat the question.
The question is, what was your conclusion to his mental state in terms of a professional, I will continue on with my questions. What else have you found out about Mr. Heisen's death prior to this? Mr. Heisen's death?
Well, I know that there was a suicide note that was found.
All right. And did you make any more conclusions of Mr. Heisen's mental state?
Well, that he was obviously mentally unwell due to the suicide note and the very apparent need that he must provide for his family and the $5 million judgment that was made. It was obvious that he was very stressed about the situation.
No further questions. I don't think so.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
You were contacted by the Consolidated Brokers of Boise Insurance Company in 2015, correct?
I was.
Since Consolidated Brokers of Boise Insurance Company had given you a retainer of $50,000, isn't it easy to extrapolate that you were already biased towards them?
They gave me $50,000.
Yes or no, please?
Yes.
It is true that Liam Heisenai had a judgment entered against him for $5 million just 2 months prior to his death, correct?
Yes.
It is also true that Mr. Heisenai married Isabella in 2010, just a few months after they started to date, when his financial status was sound, correct?
Yes.
The deceased, Mr. Heisenai, would spend reckless amounts of money to impress Isabella before their marriage, correct?
That is correct.
However, once they got married, Mr. Heisenai had to maintain financial security, correct?
Yes.
When Liam first met Isabella, was he financially stable?
Objection, Your Honor. I mentioned the facts. There's nothing in the affidavit stating that whether he was or wasn't financially stable.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Certainly.
The plaintiff would like to say that it's a reasonable extrapolation. It was presented earlier in this case today.
I agree. Although,
in fact, he would not shy away from splurging on her during their courtship, correct?
Correct.
But this did not continue as the years went on, right?
Correct.
Would you say Isabella was happy with her husband no longer spoiling her?
I mean,
Yes or no?
I wouldn't know.
In fact, didn't Liam put a restriction on Isabella's spending?
He did.
You mentioned there was a suicide note in your affidavit, correct?
There was.
However, there is no forensic evidence to prove the authenticity of the note, correct?
No.
Therefore, it is possible to extrapolate that the note was forged by someone else, right?
It's a possibility.
Is it possible that Isabella, who was unhappy with the financial restrictions her husband put on her, could have possibly forged the note?
I suppose it's possible.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
thank you.
Dr. O'Hara, could you just repeat the mental state that you had concluded that Mr. Heisenberg had been in?
Well, it's commonly referred to as Psych 8.
And could you explain that?
It's just the mental stress from that is put upon someone.
Objection, Your Honor.
The redirect does not pertain to anything that the cross was examined on.
I just didn't say psych ache.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, what is your objection?
The redirect does not pertain to anything that the cross was on. It was beyond scope.
And what say you to that?
Well, in order to understand why Mr. Heisen had, how he had died, we need to understand how his mental state was, and that is what she was also trying to prove during her case.
But, Your Honor, it was not brought out on the direct in the first place.
That's correct. It's sustained.
All right. Could you? No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
May it please the court. Your Honor, the facts of this case are quite clear. Liam Heisnai, a loving father and husband, perished in a horrifying event that left his family in emotional ruins and without a source of income. Luckily, Liam had taken the initiative to secure a backup plan for his family before he died. He did this by purchasing a life insurance policy for the amount of $5 million from Boise Insurance Consolidated. After that, Philip Rupp, an expert in fire scene reconstruction, concluded that the propane explosion was an accident. The insurance policy should have ended the pain of our client Leah Heisenai endures from having to rehash the details of her father's gruesome death. But instead, Boise Insurance has chosen to prolong the family's devastating experience by making the claim that Liam died by suicide on November 1st, 2013. And all this so that they would not have to be responsible for paying the claim that they had promised. Your Honor, the plaintiff was successful in its endeavor to prove its burden of proof. We established the essential elements of our case by a fair preponderance of the evidence. Liam's behavior prior to his death was shown that he was content with life. Liam was an involved father, a social and reliable friend, as well as a fiscally responsible father for his family. Additionally, Liam did not have any motive extreme enough to have driven him to take his life that day. You have heard from Leah, the daughter of Liam, that he had an active social life as well as a happy romantic one with the now widowed Isabella. And despite the claims of opposing counsel, Liam was in good financial standing in his life at that moment. He indeed had several major projects scheduled both at the time of his death and in the month following. And then in addition to that, he also had a healthy liquid balance at the time. But perhaps more important than that, he was a man who had everything to live for. Additionally, you have heard from Winnie Silverman about the real reason that the contested insurance plan was purchased. After having lived through the devastation that losing his first wife brought, Liam saw that life was short. He needed to make sure that his beloved family could carry on in the event that an accident occurred in his notably dangerous line of construction work. Lastly, you have heard from the expert of fire safety, Philip Rupp. The most likely course of events, according to his expert analysis, was that a gas leak led to a fatal explosion in the morning. Additionally, the tank also lacked an OPD valve, meaning that the tank was 1, more than 10 years old, and 2, the leak was much more probable. While in general, plaintiff has the burden of proof, in one particular part of this case, there exists a precedent set in 1957. In the case Krantz versus John Hancock Mutual Life Insurance Company, it was declared that a presumption exists against suicide until evidence is introduced to the contrary. The plaintiff believes that opposing counsel has not been able to bring said evidence about the state of the death of Liam Heisenai. In addition, according to the case Belbas versus New York Life Insurance Company, it is up to the court, not to the insurance company, to determine whether or not the death was suicide. Liam Heisenai did not die by suicide. Every family may have its problems, and every business may have its ups and downs. And despite what the defense would like to have you believe, Liam Heisenai was a dedicated father and a happily married husband. His death was a tragic turn of events, and his family deserves to get the closure that his insurance policy should provide. Your Honor, Leah Heisenai works a full-time job at Walmart. She has no want for great prosperity, as she believes what her father taught her. One must work for their money, and today, Liam Heisenai is someone who believes that to be very true. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Honor, this evening, we understand that on November 1st, 2013, at 7:29, the explosion from Mr. Hyzine's truck resulted in his death. Now, in our opening, we mentioned that we would be calling 3 different witnesses to the stand today to prove that Mr. Hyzine committed suicide. First, we talked to Jim Grace, who was the stepson of Mr. Hyzine. Now, Jim showed that Mr. Hyzine was in a huge financial struggle, even going as far as finding an article on propane explosions used at work sites. And he told his own son that he would always look after him in the note that was found during his PAX convention. Next, we heard from Samuel Spade. And Mr. Spade, who has had a close connection to the situation, has had looked at it with a very close eye, has also proved the clear struggle that Mr. Hyzine has had during his life. A suicide note was found, and it is difficult to understand why someone would forge a suicide note in order to get the money that had already been being given. Lastly, we had already heard from Dr. Stevie O'Hara, an expert witness, who looked at the situation and concluded that Mr. Hyzine was not in the right state of mind prior to his death. Now, Boise, the Consolidated Brokers of Boise Insurance Company has met all of the payments prior to the death of Mr. Hyzine, which goes to show that my client here has not had a situation where they have attempted to not give the money that has been earned and that is supposed to be given to Mr. Hyzine and his family. Now, we understand that a father and a husband has died, and for that we are deeply sorry for the family of Mr. Hyzine. But, Your Honor, it's clear that from all the evidence that the defense has shown today, Mr. Hyzine chose to end his life for reasons that we may never understand. But we see that with clear evidence from his suicide note to the way that he had began acting and the mental state that he had been in, as well as the different types of things that he had looked up online, we understand that he had brought himself to this end in order to get out of a situation that he did not want to be in. The Consolidated Brokers of Boise Insurance Company is not at fault and should not have to pay the money if Mr. Hyzine had decided to end his own life. Thank you so much, Your Honor.
Thank you. Got a pretty good handle on your material. You really want to focus on a couple of things. First and foremost, know your material. Know your material in and out. If you're a witness, know your affidavit. And work with each other. Break up into small groups, because it's clear, it becomes very clear when you're up here and you're observing when that's been done and maybe when it hasn't been done so much. Because it's so important for you to then be able to be ready to think on your feet, right? Because there are going to be objections, you are going to get thrown off, you are going to be nervous. So you kind of need to have that auto memory right from the get-go, okay?